This is internationally best-selling indie author Michael Brent Collings inviting you to join me at bestsellerlife.com/DCR to unlock my tips, tricks, and hacks for a successful writing career. So go to bestsellerlife.com/DCR and kickstart your writing adventure today.
This is Daniel.
And this is Krebs.
This is Alton.
And I am Matai.
And you're listening to Dungeon Crawlers Radio, the greatest geek podcast out there. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Dungeon Crawlers, where we are here to entertain you. And hopefully, you are entertained. If you don't know the reference to that, then I'm sorry, you need to go watch Gladiator. It is a fantastic movie. But that is not what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss Yarro gaming tables, to be specific. This is a Kickstarter that Krebs did a while back, and he got his table. He's used it quite frequently. If you were to watch the video of us recording right now, you'd see that it's right behind him. It has this glorious, cobalt blue felt on it that is just visually stunning. But we're going to talk about that today. Tanner Yarro, who owns Yarro Studios, has been on the show before. Great guy. He is not with us, unfortunately, but we do want to talk about his tables because, gaming is kind of one of our things. That's one of the things we enjoy. So we're going to turn this over to Krebs to move forward with the discussion. But no, it's just him and I in this episode. But we're going to make it fun because really, I've seen the table, but I have some questions because I've seen other gaming tables. And so we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, so when I got a chance to meet Tanner a couple of FanXs ago.
Yes.
At that time, I think it was about 3 FanXs ago. At that time, he was shipping out the flip coin product.
Yes.
Which is like dice, but in the form of coins. You flip a coin, and then a little ball bearing inside drifts to one side of the coin or the other, and that indicates which number you've rolled. Beautiful pieces. I kickstarted that one also, and I got that set. And at the time that we met Tanner, I was still waiting for mine to arrive. The shipping was a little slow on that one, but it eventually arrived. And beautiful, beautiful pieces of gaming accoutrement. Then he announced around that same time that those coins were shipping, he started sending out these like little videos and emails showing that he wanted to create a portable gaming table. Now, gaming tables, for those who may not know for sure, and if you don't know, maybe you just haven't been looking for them because they are everywhere now.
Yes.
But a gaming table basically is a standard table, but with a recessed surface somewhere between 2 to 4 inches or so that the game sits at a slightly lower depth, but it gives the players more of a bird's eye view of what's going on. It also allows for things like table toppers, which then you can use to save the state of your game if you have to walk away for a time, or you could use the gaming table as more of like a standard flat surface table. These are super excellent pieces of furniture, typically that come with clip-on or magnetized accessories so that you can have shelves and cup holders and snacks or game piece organizers and things of that nature, all meant to elevate the gaming experience. Now, I've had a chance to play on a few different game tables. Now, at one point in time, when there was a game store locally that had these types of game tables that were more like permanent fixtures of furniture, recessed surfaces, and all of that. And getting to play on those in the game store was a fantastic experience. Daniel, have you been to game stores that have those types of tables?
Yeah, I have. And those type of tables are, they're solid. To try to move one of those, it takes several people. It's not easy, but you are right. Those gaming tables provide a lot of comfort. They have several different options, like you said, whether they're magnetic or clip-on. You have a cup holder. Some of you even have a dice tray that connect, and that's sitting in front of you, so you're not rolling dice out onto the table itself. Others have compartments where you can put your books, so the next time you come play, you can open up that compartment and pull your book out. There's a lot of amazing things that I've seen. Most of them are built very solidly out of some form of wood, whether that's oak or something. But like the one key thing that I've seen with those, like you said, is normally you can put a tabletop over it. There's a piece you can put over it. Everything can stay there till the next game session, and then it becomes a normal table. You can eat dinner off of it or whatever. In fact, I think Yarro Studios has just announced that they have something very similar to that now, besides the portable one. But having game stores or even a buddy have one of those gaming tables tends to also kind of up the gameplay, because now it's not just some random table that you have to put everything back onto or take off. It can be set up and ready to go. So when it's time to play, there it is. Go ahead.
I
was going to say the one drawback that I've always found with the game tables, though, is for the most part, they do lack some space. They're either because they're one size fits all pretty much.
Yeah.
So if you're doing like a big space battle or a big game session of D&D, you are confined to that space. So a lot of times I've seen where they've gone super big. They've gotten really big tables to account for that. Especially if you're playing like Warhammer or 40K or anything like that. You need those big tables. Problem is, not a lot of people have that space in their home.
Yeah, and so there are definitely some pragmatic things to consider. Now, you and I have played on the game tables in game stores. We actually helped to assemble game tables in game stores. And you're right, it's like wood and metal construction. What Yarro was trying to do, let me back up a step. Actually, my brother, Matthew, who's on the show, and my sister, Sarah, who I'm trying to remember if she was on the show when we did one of the Kroll anniversary episodes.
Yeah. Yep.
We organized last year, about this time actually, Gameageddon, and we got our families together. We went to Bear Lake. We went to this Airbnb cabin, and at that time, Matthew had struck a friendly acquaintance with a husband-wife couple who create game tables under the company name Styx Furniture, like the River Styx, STYX.
Oh, nice.
And they gave us a table to try. We had to obviously give it back, but they gave us a table to take to Gameageddon and put through its paces. And it was a fantastic experience. In fact, I think we have some of that content up on the YouTube channel. But, and if not, we'll get it up there, but there is a video for that. It was an amazing experience, but it definitely took at least 2 people to put that whole thing together when we arrived. And it took a little bit of time to assemble, but once it was up, it was great. Now, the whole promise of the Yarro game table was that it would be portable. It would be something that you could set up as a single individual, and that it would also offer many of the same features, if not almost all the same features, of any other standard gaming table. Recessed surface, accessory track going around the perimeter of the table, and he'd even come up with some really cool stuff, including a mobile dice tray that would clip into the top rail system and be able to travel the circumference of the table. Now, all that said, I'd like to talk about some of the good things, and then I'm going to get hypercritical about some of the obvious low-hanging fruit that was not so great.
Okay.
When he first announced this gaming table, a lot of people mocked it because it basically looked like a Costco table with a metal rail attached to the top, and people kind of poo-pooed it a bit. But I held out some hope that this would be a better experience than that, and I'm glad that I did. So to your point, Daniel, a lot of tables, it kind of depends on how wide they've decided to go or how long they've decided to go. This table, I think one of the best aspects of this table is that they found dimensions that give you tons of playroom without taking up tons of space. Nice. And so the table itself, if you know the short dimension, sort of like front to back, if you will, the length that you stretch with your arms from where you're sitting, is 3.25 feet long. So you have about, what is it, 40 inches, something like that? Yeah, no, 39 inches from one side of the table to the other side of the table, and that is wider than, or maybe we call it deeper. I don't know. It's farther away than a standard folding table. If I could just speak English, that'd be great. And I think that works out awesomely. I've laid out Oathsworn, which is a huge footprint game, and it's impressive at how comfortable it is seating 4 people around that space. It also, because of the recessed table, I don't know about you, but the thing I like about gaming tables with the recessed, it doesn't seem like it would make that much of a difference, but that like 3 or 4 inches of depth, it makes me feel like the gods on Olympus in the movie Clash of the Titans, the original, where they would like put the game pieces onto and then people would come alive and they were playing with the humans. It kind of feels like that, and it's not to oversell it, but that little bit of depth, I think, elevates the gaming experience, which is a funny word to say in this case, but because your perspective is elevated, and I think it makes for a better game experience overall. And this one, the depth is about that. It's about what, like about 3-inch depth roughly.
Yeah.
And the game table, as you mentioned, you said it was like cobalt felt. That is a neoprene mat. And the neoprene mat is sized to fit perfectly the entire dimension of the recessed surface inside the rail dimension, if you will. And in terms of how long the table is, so we've got about 39 inches wide. In terms of length, it is 5.75 feet long, so it's not quite 6 feet. What they did originally, it was going to be like 3 feet by 6 feet, and they decided to change that to give it a little bit more width, but they had to shorten how long the table is. And actually, believe it or not, it kind of works out great. Just that 1/4 foot, that 3-inch shift from the length of the table, and then adding that to the width of the table, makes a positive difference, in my opinion. They also went with legs that were wider set, but they were also pushed in toward the center of the table more, so that you don't bash your knees if you're sitting on the ends of the table. And so little things like that, little thoughtful moments like that, make this table actually very comfortable and very fun to sit at, despite the fact that it is a folding table. The body, the surface of the table is plastic, very sturdy, very, for the most part, plastic. The rail system is metal, the legs are metal, and then everything folds together, clips together, and becomes, roughly half of its length and dimension, and about almost 6 inches or so in folded width. So that's the basic overview of the table and its dimensions. And as a game surface, I think it works really, really well.
Okay. So, I mean, with the 3 inches, that kind of gives that depth, like you said, that's always worth it in a game table, because it makes it so pieces don't fall off the table. If someone accidentally knocks it off, it's still on the table. If you roll a die on the table, it stays on the table. So that's something that is one of the positives of a game table. The neoprene mat, I didn't realize it was neoprene. That adds some. I mean, a lot of people have those mats now. If you're playing card games or a die game, that's a lot of what those mats are made out of. So that was a good choice to go that route. The size dimensions, I think that's, at least for me, okay, they went that route. They added 3 inches in width, and they took
They took 3 inches from one dimension.
Yeah, and then added it to the other. Okay. The one thing that you did mention that I was impressed with when I saw was the leg placement, because there is nothing more annoying when you sit at a folding table and you bang your knee. The gaming experience is just ruined every time you knock your knee on a leg. So that is one thing I did like. The one thing, though, and we'll dive maybe into the cons here a little bit, is, and you can attest to this or not because you definitely have played on it more, is, again, it's still a folding table. It seems kind of light. It seems a little flimsy. We go from plastic to metal. And again, it just would have been nice maybe on the plastic to have some sort of metal or something a little bit harder than plastic so that it protects, because plastic can still be broken. It is durable but not impervious to damage. Where it is a game table. My question, and a question I would pose is, how flat, how smooth is that plastic? Because definitely when you go to roll a die on there or put pieces on there, did the plastic warp any during shipping? I mean, we know that happens and things like that. So maybe you can attest to that a little bit.
Yeah, actually I can. So that is one area where I almost immediately had some disappointment. Now, to kind of like put the cherry on top of the pros really quick.
Sure.
One thing they did think about was that if you purchase 2 of these tables, they have special clamps where you can connect these tables together, and the rail system can be removed on one side so that you can create a Warhammer table by putting 2 of these side by side and having doubled the width of the play surface, which I think is really kind of cool. And then the rail system is contiguous at that point.
Okay.
I think that's really good. But the part where it starts to kind of fall apart for me just a little bit is this is, of course, being manufactured in China for cost reasons. It arrived on my doorstep, and in the shipping process from going from overseas to getting into the boxes in the U.S. to arriving on my doorstep, in fact, actually, when the box arrived, it was barely still sealed. It was like parts of it were just flapping open, and it had obviously taken a hit in shipping. Part of my rail system has a ding in it, like not just like a chip in the paint, but an actual like dent, an impression. Now, fortunately, it's at such a location and only to a certain depth such that it does not impact the rail system's ability to hold accessories or things like that. So it was one of those things where it's like, it's not worth trying to get this replaced or anything. It's a nuisance more than anything. But then I set the table up. First, it's supposed to be able to be set up by one person. And the legs themselves, in order to be folded up and to be collapsed into the table, the legs can actually be extended up to 3 levels. And you have to collapse those legs all the way to level 0 in order to fold the leg into the underside of the table to be transported. Additionally, the supports are not at the standard width. They're actually pushed way, way out to the edges. Which gives space for people's knees when they're sitting at the ends, right? Their knees can pass through the gap in between.
Yeah.
Very thoughtful. But in order to accommodate, on normal folding tables, when you fold the leg out, there is a center post that supports the leg staying folded outward. In order to make all this work, they've had to make the angle braces that go from near where the legs are mounted on the table to the legs themselves. They've had to make those detachable, and you have to basically attach them and then hand screw them on. So now you have one on each side of those, and there is a detachable center post that clips on to the center of the crossbar of the legs, and then extends to the center of the table near where the fold occurs, and then must be wedged in place. So you can think of it almost like a classic door stop from the or a door jamb. It's actually called a security bar from like the 70s and the 80s, where you would like prop it underneath the doorknob, and then you would like put the foot of it against the floor, and the idea is that people can't push the door open. They took that approach with this, and those bars are completely detachable, 100% detachable. And so as one person setting it up, The first difficulty is that when you go to extend the legs, they are wide set and they have 2 points of release that you have to extend the legs down, and that becomes very challenging. So I'm usually under the table, wearing the table like a turtle shell, and then like pulling these legs down and then rotating 180 degrees and grabbing the other set of legs and and extending those down. And then you have to attach the little side braces, and then you have to get the center bar in there. It's cumbersome to say the least. And although it transports well, it does transport well, but the setup as one person is challenging. And then once it is set up, the fold in the middle, to your point, you were talking about the plastic.
Yeah.
Well, this plastic is not as rigid as I would like it to be. It's not as sturdy, thick, and stable.
Yeah.
You can tell that it's injection molded with hollow space in the middle. And the center of it, if you don't put those...
Sags.
Yeah, or it doesn't quite line up. The lip between both halves doesn't quite line up. And so even though I've had this like set out for months now and we've played on it, the neoprene mat is a great thing because it covers up the gap between the fold, but my fold does not sit flush. And so when we put a board on there, there is a little bit of lift in the middle, and it causes everything to kind of slope one direction or the other, which I'm very disappointed about.
Yeah. I mean, one thing with the setup, I was just thinking as you're describing that, have you ever flipped it like a turtle on its back, where the table is flat on the ground, and then you could extend the legs and put in all those pieces instead of having it kind of up and sitting on your back?
Yes, and it's, again, cumbersome and heavy to kind of get back onto its feet.
Okay.
But with two people, that's not as big an issue, right? So yeah, setting it up that way is a lot easier, and takedown is also easier when you flip it onto its lid.
But it still defeats the purpose where it was, hey, this is very simple that one man can do it. It really is a two-man job.
And if you're not on a carpeted surface, like if you're like on a hardwood surface or something, you don't want to put metal rails on your non-carpeted surface, right?
I get that. So, but that is also very disappointing about the lip, where the two surfaces are not connecting properly, and that is where a sturdy, solid wood table, you don't have that problem.
No.
And that is one of the concerns I had with that folding table is like, okay, how well does that match up? Because, if you're rolling a die out on that table, which I think they're like, it doesn't matter because we got these dice tray. I'm the type of person that I prefer rolling out on the table. With the neoprene
mat, it's a great rolling experience.
Yeah. But when you have that lip, that subtle difference affects the roll of your die. It is sad to say it does.
Well, I don't know if you knew this or not, but I'm a huge fan of the game Zombicide.
Oh, yeah.
And the board is modular, right? Which is, it's not as bad as some boards because all the tiles are square, and so you can kind of line it up. And I did this last night, actually. You can kind of line the tiles up such that the lip happens at like a junction of tiles. But I also like playing the game Clank, and the Clank is also Clank in Space, and Clank, the board for Clank in Space is also a modular tile system, but the tiles are not square. They're anything but. They're polyhedral. Well, not polyhedral. They are polygonal tiles, and so they're not uniform squares. And then you put this on there, and now the tiles don't quite line up, and it becomes a pain. So yeah. That it's such a small thing, but it's one of those things that, like, if it's a little off, it creates a big distraction. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. And those are both fantastic games. But
thank you. Yeah.
It does throw it off.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love Zombicide. I love Clank too. But when you're moving and there is a slight incline, your pieces tend to slide. If you're rolling and you're rolling in that area, it's going to affect your dice roll. And that, I know it seems anal, but there is nothing more annoying than when your pieces don't fit flush. There's nothing more annoying than when you can see there's a slight incline or a deviation in your board. Yeah, I mean, it's bad enough when you get a game and you pick out a board piece and you can see that it's warped. in some way, and you're like, oh man, really? But then you have pieces that are great, but your table is causing that warp or that deviation, and it's just frustrating.
Yeah.
And then I get that this is probably, some people are listening to this and like, yeah, that's really minor. It's a slight deviation, which is true. It is a slight deviation. It's not a huge deal. I mean, obviously, Krebs still uses his gaming table and stuff like that. But
yeah, you kind of get used to it. It's just sort of the pain of like, this was planned to be a portable table, and there were many promises made. In fact, I kind of want to move on to this next topic because
sure.
I think the greatest disappointment for me with the Yarro table is just that there was a lot of promise and a lot of potential that ended up being underdelivered. And I love Yarro products. I do. The shipping window has always lagged, but I can wait. I'm a patient person. I can wait extra long if I get a good product, right? Mm-hmm. So I received the table. When I purchased the table, it was actually something that my siblings, Matthew and Sarah, and I, we went in on this together. We split it 3 ways, and we committed to this Kickstarter. And the table took a long time to arrive, in part because of the impact of tariffs and the impact that had on shipping and things like that. But also, it took them a long time just to agree on a final mold and a final version of the table with the manufacturer. But eventually that happens. The table arrives great. And the table came with one accessory, which is like this actually pretty good phone holder with polyurethane grippies. And so you could mount your phone on this thing for like when you're doing narration, like professional narration, or maybe just mellow dice sound tracking or anything like that, right? So that part was kind of cool. But we also went in on a huge accessories bundle, just tons. And none of that arrived. None of it. And then I was like, oh, come on. And so then I had to wait another couple months for the accessories to arrive. And then they did. Now, the accessories that were promised or that were first shown, of course, these are like concepts. I get it. I get how Kickstarters work. But they had some like prototypes and some concepts. You had this one dice tray, I mentioned this earlier, that could attach to the top rail of the system and it can run the circumference of the table. I thought that was really, really, really smart. It would be really cool to have. And they showed it as like almost like a mining cart of sorts, like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where this thing mounts and you could like push it and it would just like slide around, boo doo doo doo, go around the corners and stuff. If you make the sound effects, it works better. Anyway, so I get the accessories, I get the dice tray, and the dice tray was my first massive letdown. Not only was it not like a mining cart, and when I say that, by the way, the original concept had like little wheels on the bottom. So you would clip it into the rail system so that it had a guide track, but then it had wheels to help with smooth transfer around the table. This dice tray came in, has no wheels whatsoever, has the smallest amount of protruding plastic that does clip into the rail system and must clip in a certain orientation so that it can take the corners. But it does not, it's basically just very thin plastic. It wasn't even very thick plastic. Thin plastic gliding along the surface of the metal rail system. And you push this thing kind of herky-jerky around the perimeter. It does not have a smooth transition of any kind. It does take the corners. It does go around the rounded corners. But it was the best part of the dice tray was that it came with its own neoprene mat to sit in the dice tray itself to make rolling the dice a little bit smoother, a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier. But the tray itself, because of its plastic nature, it's not square in the carpenter's sense. It's kind of warped a little bit, and then it's just plastic gliding along metal. And so that was a huge letdown. They have 2 different types of shelves. They have a shelf that's about a foot across. And they have a shelf that's about a foot and a half across. Pretty wide shelf. Actually, maybe closer to 2 feet. Might be closer to 2 feet. And the smaller shelf comes out about 6 inches or so, and then the larger shelf comes out about 8 inches. And so these shelves, when they were first when they were first proposed and first advertised, they had like a slightly raised beveled edge, and it was like sort of like black trim with simulated wood inset, and they looked like pretty smooth, solid shelves. Well, when those shelves arrived, they weren't two-tone. They weren't even simulated wood looking. They were just these flat, like fry sauce colored shelves, right here. They do have a raised lip that go all the way around them, but it was just kind of unattractive giant hunks of monocolored plastic. And the most frustrating part for me, where the accessories are concerned, is that all the accessories come with like slotted tabs that you then fit into these feet, these detachable feet, and the detachable feet are what clip into the table. And the reason they did that is because with the way that these shelves are designed, you cannot, with the feet attached still, clip them into the table or remove them from the table. You have to first put the feet into the rail system, space them roughly as far apart as they're supposed to be, and then one slot at a time, line them up with the shelf, and then push the shelf into the feet so that they mount to the table. And with the smaller shelves, it's 2 feet. With the larger shelves, it's 3 feet. And with the 2 feet, you can kind of put your hands on either side and use your thumbs to leverage the shelf off the table and then remove the feet. Yeah. But with the larger shelf, now you risk cracking or breaking the shelf while you're trying to detach it because there are now 3 posts, and the one in the middle, you can't detach them all at once. It is a cumbersome and sometimes, if I'm being honest, a little bit painful because they have sharp corners. So when you're popping these things off, it digs into your hands. Like, it is an uncomfortable, painful experience. Whereas like with the sticks table, everything's magnetized. You literally hold it close enough to the table and then ka-chink, it just like sucks the accessory into place, and then the accessory stays in place beautifully, right? And so the shelves are horrible disappointments as accessories.
Where do I go with that?
It's so much, dude. It's so much.
I mean, the table itself, there's some annoying things about it. Like you've already addressed. The accessories just sound like they're a complete disappointment. Where there was things promised and poor execution. Where, like you said, what's the point of the rail system if you can't roll that around? There's no wheels. There's nothing to do it. Yes, it kind of slides, but it just doesn't do it in a great way. I didn't realize those shelves were so cumbersome. That sounds extremely annoying. And the fact that 3-foot one, you could possibly break it by trying to detach that. That's not good.
And the moment you start putting anything of weight on it, it begins to sag. So it's like they're not even like sturdy enough to stay flush and level.
So what's the point of them then at that point? Like, I mean, the whole point of having that extra space is so that you can put your books there, or you could put gaming components that you can then use. But if it starts sagging and it doesn't hold, they're kind of useless. It's just extra space that you can only put light stuff on there. Yeah,
you can put cards. You could put player, not trays, but like
the miniatures.
Cardboard. You could put like minis on there. You could put like the cardboard pallets or whatever. Yeah. But like you put a bag of gummy worms on there. Like the large bag of gummy worms or Skittles or something.
Yeah.
A 5-pound, and it starts to slope. I grabbed behind me. I grabbed the cup holder. Now, here's where we get into like the middle zone. Here's where we get like into the mid. So I wanted to pull this up for those who have the video. You can see this. So here's the foot attachment, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And every accessory comes with enough feet to satisfy the individual accessory. Okay. And then here is the cup, which they call this like a snack tray, but it's really just a cup holder. It even has like a little handle cut out, right? I will say this is oversized. So this will hold most like large soda cups or even like Yeti style cups will fit in here pretty well. My water bottle has kind of a wider base, and so it goes about halfway and stops, but it's still enough to support it.
Yeah.
But here's the foot apparatus. This foot apparatus has to be clipped into the table first, and then the cup holder has to then be pushed into it
And clip.
slid into place. And once that happens, you cannot clip this into the table or remove it from the table. But as a cup holder that might be holding like an open can, it's almost like it's a semi-beneficial security measure, so you don't accidentally knock something off the table, like knock an accessory and the whole drink hits the floor or whatever. Yeah. So, okay, all right. And then there is another one. I wish I'd grabbed it earlier, but there's another recessed tray that it's more like it's closer to like the mining bucket, the mining trolley in Temple of Doom. But there is a tray, trapezoidal in its bucket shape, that it's a fairly good size. It's great for game pieces, and it's great for like snacks. And that is the one accessory that once you attach the foot, you can actually clip into and remove from the table without having to detach from the foot. So that's the one accessory that works the way you'd expect it to work. It only has one foot, and I have noticed that the tray itself, it will cant to one side or the other, left and right, if you put a little bit of weight on it. But small gripe aside, that accessory actually works mostly as advertised and does exactly what it should do. So the oversized cup holders and the snack/game piece trays are actually pretty good accessories. They're not terrible. And when you consider it, keep in mind that this was all designed for travel and portability, and ultimately that's the kind of experience you get out of it.
Okay. So putting it in that perspective, it's designed for travel. It's designed to be able to move everywhere. It seems like it hits, for the most part, the areas it needs to. If you're looking for a sturdy, solid gaming table that you're going to use all the time, maybe not quite as much. I'll have you give it, get graded on that. But for something that you can take back and forth that is not a standard folding table you get from, a store, which can be atrocious. Unless it's that standard square one where no one likes those. And they're easy to knock over. This is a little bit more sturdy than those. It has a little bit more of a level surface than those, but it still has the same struggles a folding table has.
Yes.
So if you were to grade this, let's say, on... we'll grade it in a couple ways. So, game table performance, is the best game table performance you can experience. A to F. Where would you put that?
Somewhere between a B- and a C+.
Okay.
It is maybe more toward like a B- or even a solid B. Now that I think about it. While it does have its shortcomings as game tables go, I'm still getting a pretty nominal game table experience out of it. Okay. We play on it frequently. It does have some annoyances, and the chief among them being it's just not a flat play surface at the center of the table. But if you had two pairs playing Star Realms, for example, if you had like a deck builder that you were playing, you could fit up to 4 people at that table, and distributing your cards a certain way, you wouldn't even notice that. So yeah, I would give it let's say a B. Let's say a B.
When it comes to setup, the ease of setup, they originally said one man can do it. Where does that fall from an A to an F?
If A+ is the top tier, I would say it's probably a BB+. Okay. It's not horrible. It's cumbersome if nothing else. The table's a bit heavier than you might expect, but that's good for its purpose. When you have it folded up, there is a carry bag it can fit into that I purchased that has wheels on the bottom, so you can actually wheel this into places. And it does have, that same bag does have pretty significant space for carrying accessories. So as in terms of carrying it to places and then setting it up, taking it down and taking it home and stuff, it's about a BB+.
Okay, so we're hitting kind of the same realm. Final one, accessories. Where do the accessories land between an A
what a mixed bag.
and an F?
Solid C. Solid C. You've got some accessories that deliver on the promise and many that do not. One of the accessories that I was really excited about was the table topper, which comes in 4 segments for the table. The idea being that you could save the state of your game, and when you take the table topper off, the table topper can also be, is meant to put things on top of and use like a standard table, right?
Yeah.
When you take the table topper off, on the underside, this is where they had sort of gamers in mind. The underside is whiteboard material, so that you can draw on it, you can keep score, you can make maps, you could use it for gaming purposes, right? Except that the table toppers themselves are not rigid enough to support anything of weight without adding, and they included these without adding silicone suction cup support columns. So you, on the underside of these panels, you have to like put these suction cups on the bottom that are columns to support the table in the middle so that it doesn't sag so bad.
Which those could damage your pieces that are on
Which,
the table.
yeah, like how do you save state when you have columns there?
Yeah.
And we've already talked about how the surface of the table that these columns are resting on
It's not flat.
is plastic that flexes,
Yeah.
right? And so it is. I will say, after leaving the table topper on for a few days, I got a little bit used to it, but it didn't matter what we did with it. Like, I even put my laptop on it at one point, and it worked okay. But no matter what we did, the pieces would start to like disalign with each other, and you got all the sag. So all of the accessories had so much promise and potential that they woefully underdelivered on, with just a couple of exceptions. I give it a solid C on accessories.
Okay. Well, I mean, it sounds like the writing's on the wall. For the most part, the table lands a good solid B. It's not a home run. It's not perfect. Not everything is. And a B for a traveling, collapsing, foldable gaming table is pretty solid.
Yeah, if I can say so, where this thing really shines is you are buying a portable gaming platform. And in terms of portability and functioning as a portable solution, actually this is probably where it shines, and that's what it was designed for, right? You are getting a portable experience, and they have nailed the portability aspect of it pretty solidly. I wish some of the finer details had been addressed better, but as a portable game table, as a portable solution, would I take this to a friend's house who doesn't have a game table? Yes, I would. And would I take this, hundreds of miles to another Gameageddon event? Absolutely, I would. And it would still be superior than playing on just a flat, non-gaming surface.
And then where it doesn't shine, well, I wouldn't say doesn't, where it shines less is the accessories. My only one concern, as you mentioned, you buy a second table. What happens if the second table doesn't match up as well?
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't.
Does the rail system work? Or what happens if it has a slightly different variance in where the tables connect? How well would that be? Would that become annoying? We don't know because we don't have a second table. That is where some of my other concern would show up. But for the most part, it sounds like, as a portable gaming table, it's still, there's more pros than cons. The accessories, it sounds like they, hopefully there's a 2.0 version that comes out, and the accessories are a little bit made better. There's nothing that, as you're talking about these, it just sounds frustrating to me, especially the table topper. There should have been some sort of rigid form in there,
right,
so that you didn't need supports. I know that probably would have increased cost, but there is nothing worse than a saggy table. I mean, I have folding tables of my own that, due to warping and being out in the hot sun or other things, they do sag. You put a paper plate on there with some food and it kind of slides towards the middle. That is annoying. And if your table topper is doing something similar to that, or you put suction cup columns on it,
yeah, those are ridiculous.
I'm
was
sorry.
the most Mickey Mouse solution I'd ever seen.
Just put some rigid metal struts underneath that will hold. That would have been a little bit. in my opinion, not the best, but better than suction cup columns, because you're right. How do you keep the game state if you have to have these columns? And I'm like sure that, well, they can sit on the stuff. Well, yeah, but they can also damage my stuff while under there. What happens if that's on there and then someone shifts that top piece and now I have this scratch along my cardboard piece or whatever? So that is disappointing, to say the least. But at least it still lands in a C. Not the greatest. It could be worse. It could be a D or an F. There are definitely some things that need improvement, but for the most part, it sounds like it's still a solid. We'll give it an average between those of a B- overall for a game table.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does occur to me that I think with a little ingenuity, some 3D printing, and maybe some help from our friends at Sticks, I'm suddenly realizing there are some opportunities here for us to make some better accessories. Yeah. So I want to look into that a little bit more. But folks, as far as the Yarro game table is concerned, I don't totally hate it, even though I was a bit disappointed at first blush. I do actually enjoy it. I play on it all the time. If you can find a Yarro game table with accessories for like under $400, you may have found a really sweet deal.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, this is our review of the Yarro game table. Hopefully you found it entertaining and interesting as well as informative. Again, it's not a horrible product. It just missed the mark in a couple places. So with that said, we'll catch you next time.
And whether you are in the market for a game table, a Yarro, for example, or maybe a Sticks because you have way more money than I do, always remember to be epic and don't suck.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find us.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
What happens when modern magic, high-tech weaponry, and an unstoppable dragon collide? Find out in the epic audiobook of A Dragon's Fate, brought to life by Daniel and Krebs. This Whitney Award finalist novel will pull you into a pulse-pounding world where a secret cabal battles for power, and a dragon could bring everything to an explosive end. Don't just hear the story. Feel the magic, the danger, and the action. Get ready for a ride you won't forget. Grab your copy of A Dragon's Fate, now available on Audible.